The twin suns were setting behind the jagged hills of Colony 9, casting long golden shadows across the dusty settlement in a quiet corner of the colony, where broken machines lay forgotten and wind whispered through rusted cables. A human named Davin worked alone in his scrapyard. Davin was not a soldier, not a leader, not even someone most people noticed. He was a mechanic, quiet and clever, known for fixing things others had thrown away. Some called him a genius, others said he was just strange. But Davin didn't care what they thought. He liked machines more than people. Machines were honest. One evening, as Davin adjusted the cooling coils on an old fusion battery, he heard something unusual, a soft tapping, like metal against metal. He looked up, and there, standing at the gate, was a small alien girl. Her skin was pale blue, her clothes torn, and over her eyes was a cloth tied tight. She was blind. She didn't speak at first, only tilted her head like she was listening to the wind. Davin walked closer, careful not to scare her. "You lost?" he asked. The girl nodded slowly, then whispered, "Hungry." Her voice was soft, broken like someone who hadn't spoken in days. Davin sighed, set his tools down, and went inside. He returned with some leftover bread and a thermal flask. The girl sat by the wall and ate in silence. Her hands were thin, shaking, but her face stayed calm, peaceful. After a while, Davin asked, "What's your name?" She said, "Real," and nothing more. Days passed. Real kept coming back, never asking for much, just sitting quietly while Davin worked. Sometimes she asked about the machines. Sometimes she just listened. One day, as Davin watched her feeling the edges of an old visor helmet, an idea sparked in his mind. What if I could build something for her? He thought, something that helps her see. Davin wasn't a doctor, but he knew sensors, optics, interfaces. He had parts, he had knowledge, and now he had purpose. Late into the nights, he worked scavenging, soldering, programming. He called it the V1C, a prototype visor designed to connect to neural signals and interpret spatial data into visual pulses. When it was finally ready, he showed it to Real. She touched it gently, as if afraid it would vanish. Davin explained how to wear it, where the contact points were, and what to expect. Real nodded, trusting him without question. She put the visor on, and for a few moments, there was silence. Then she gasped. But it wasn't the gasp of joy. It was fear. "I can see," she whispered. "But not like you." Davin blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Real turned her head slowly. "I see shapes, colors, energy," she said. "And there's something else, something moving in the sky." Davin rushed to check his instruments. Nothing on radar. No anomalies, but Real insisted. "They're coming," she said. "I don't know who, but they're looking for something. Maybe for me." That night, Davin couldn't sleep. He reviewed his build logs, checked the visor's code. There was nothing strange, at least, nothing he had added. But deep in the system logs, he found fragments of data he didn't recognize. Symbols, maps, coordinates in a language he didn't speak. Where did this come from? He muttered, staring at the screen. It shouldn't be there. The next day, while Davin was out gathering parts, someone broke into the workshop. Nothing was stolen, but something was left behind, a mark, burned into the wall with precision, a circle with 4 lines through it. Like a target or a warning, Davin stood there, heart racing, visor in hand. He looked at Real, who stood silently by the door, her face calm, but her hands clenched tight. "They're already here," she said, "and they know what you've done." And just like that, Davin's quiet life was over. He hadn't just built a tool, he had unlocked something buried, something powerful, something others wanted. And now, the shadows were moving. The next morning, the wind over Colony 9 blew colder than usual. Dust swirled in the air like whispers. Of something hiding beyond sight, Davin woke up before sunrise with the sound of static buzzing in his earpiece. The sensor net around his scrapyard was tripping. Something had moved past the outer line without triggering an alarm. He grabbed his scanner and stepped outside. The sky was still dark, with only a hint of red at the horizon. Riel was already awake, sitting quietly near the broken tower. She wore the prototype visor again. Holding her knees close to her chest, her face looked calm, but her voice shook slightly. "They're watching us," she said, without turning her head. Davin looked around, but saw nothing. His scanners showed no movement, no heat signatures, no radio waves, just silence. "You sure you saw something?" he asked Riel. Nodded slowly. "Shapes above the hills, they shine like fire, but make no sound. They come and go like smoke, but they're not from this world." Davin checked the sky again. Still nothing. No ships, no drones, just clouds drifting in the morning wind. He went back into his workshop and accessed the mainframe. He pulled data from orbital satellites. What he found made his heart skip. Someone had blocked sensor feeds from 2 of the colony's relay towers. No logs, no cause, just a blackout zone around the junk fields beyond the ridge. It wasn't a glitch. Someone didn't want them to see what was coming. He called the colony authority, but got no response. Not even an error tone, just dead air. He returned to Riel, who sat still as stone. Davin said, "There's interference in orbit. Something's blocking eyes from above. You think it's connected to the shadows?" "You saw?" She nodded again. "The visor sees layers you cannot see. Energy beneath light, paths of motion through time, and they are not walking like people. They hover like machines, but feel like hunters." Davin felt a chill crawl up his back. He tried to act calm, but his mind raced. What did he build? And why was it drawing attention? Later that day, he powered up the visor's internal memory. He hadn't done this before. He assumed it only recorded basic vision maps, but buried inside were things he never programmed there. Were images of symbols, coordinates, flashes of ancient writing. He recognized none of it. "Where did these come from?" he asked aloud. Riel responded quietly, "I don't know, but when I wear it, I remember things I've never seen. It's like waking from a dream you never knew you had." Davin looked closer. Among the symbols was a repeating image, a triangle with a circle inside, and 4 lines behind it. The same mark burned into his wall the night before. He didn't believe in coincidence. Someone had put this here for a reason. And they were coming that evening. As the suns dipped low, he heard engines, not the colony's slow haulers or local speeders. This was something else, deep and clean, silent but heavy. He climbed the tower with binoculars and saw a black ship descending beyond the ridge. No lights, no flags, no ID signals. 4 figures stepped out, armored, tall, moving like they owned the dirt. They walked on. Each one turned to face the town, but they didn't enter. They waited. Davin backed down slowly, his hands shaking. He rushed inside to pack tools, discs, anything useful. Yo stood by the door, already holding a small bag. "They're here for the visor," she said. "But not just the visor they want." "What it unlocked?" Davin asked. "Then why are they not attacking?" she answered. "They don't need to. They already know where we are. They're giving us time to run because the hunt is more exciting when the prey runs." Davin froze. He looked at the girl who just days ago sat begging in the dust. Now she stood like someone older than she seemed. Someone carrying knowledge heavier than her size. "We need to leave now," she said, "because the longer we stay, the less chance we have to leave." And also, they left just as the dark settled over Colony 9, a human mechanic, a blind alien girl, and a visor that saw too much behind them in the shadows. The hunters began to move. Night covered the colony in stillness. Only the soft hum of wind moved between the buildings. The stars above blinked behind a thin layer of cloud. But Davin knew something was wrong with the sky. Something was hiding behind Ith, and Riel had taken shelter in an abandoned mining tunnel far from the colony edge. It was a forgotten place, a place no one visited since the ore dried up years ago. Davin adjusted the battery pack on Riel's visor. He had to keep it running. Whatever she could see was there. "Only warning, they are closer now," she whispered. "I can feel them, their signals pass through the rock, smooth and cold, like ice in the blood." Davin tried to strengthen the old signal scrambler he had brought. It was a crude device not made to block military tech, but it was all he had back in the colony. The four figures walked through the streets without speaking. No one stopped them, no one dared. One was different in size, but their armor was the same, flat black, no lights, no markings. One carried a long case, another had something like a drone hovering above his shoulder. Their helmets hid their faces even from the surveillance cams. They split into pairs, moving with purpose, checking shops, workstations, residences, but they didn't search like they were looking for a person. They moved like they were looking for a presence, a signal, a scent in the dark. One of them placed a small device on the ground. A pulse of light flashed silently. Every screen in the colony blinked for half a second, then went black. Real flinched underground. She grabbed her head like a sharp pain had passed through it. "They just scanned the entire area," she said. That pulse was more than a scan. It was a lock. Davin stared at the walls around them. He knew the signal would bounce, but not forever. They had minutes before their location was narrowed. He asked her, "Why are they so quiet? Why not destroy the place and take what they want?" Triel lowered her voice. "Because they are not soldiers in the way you understand. They are hunters. Their purpose is not just capture. It is control." Davin realized they were not after her for what she was, but for what she might become. The visor had awakened something not just inside Real, but perhaps inside the entire network of her forgotten people. Outside, the mine dust began to swirl unnaturally, like wind was being pulled from the earth itself. One of the hunters stopped and looked up at the stars. He tapped the side of his helmet, and a faint projection appeared in the air. 3D map of the sector, lines of movement, points of heat, power sources lighting up like veins across a living body. One node pulsed faintly under the hills. Their direction shifted instantly. Davin grabbed Real's hand. "We have to move again," he said, but Real stood still. "No," she replied. "They already know running now only changes the setting, not the ending." Davin stared at her. "What are you saying?" Riel stepped forward and placed her hand on the visor. The lens pulsed faint blue light, like a living eye. "Waking from sleep, they not the only ones with maps," she said. "And I'm not the same girl you found in the scrapyard." She closed her eyes, and in the silence, a path formed before them, not in the tunnel, but in the air itself. A glowing arc of symbols and data points drawn from a language Davin had never seen. "Follow me," she said. "I think I finally remember where I'm from, and if we get there before they do, we may have a chance." Davin nodded slowly. He didn't fully understand what she was, but he knew he believed in her. Now, as they moved deeper into the old tunnels, the hunters above began to descend into the earth. Each step they took was silent, precise, unstoppable, but something had changed for the first time in years. The prey was not just running. The prey was leading the man far below the surface. Something ancient began to stir. The tunnels grew darker. As Davin and Real walked deeper into the forgotten mines, their footsteps echoed across stone like distant heartbeats. Moist air clung to their skin, and old machinery lay scattered around them like bones of a long-dead creature. Real kept one hand on the wall, guiding herself, while the visor pulsed with faint blue light, as if sensing something hidden in the earth. Davin adjusted his pack and whispered, "Are you sure this path is safe?" Real nodded slowly. "Safe is not the right word," she said. "It is simply the only way. The visor shows something down here, knows we are coming. It is calling to us like a lost voice from another time." Davin swallowed hard. The visor had already shown strange visions, but if it was guiding them now, he had no choice but to trust it. He believed in machines, but this was no normal machine. Somehow it held memories or maps beyond human design, something ancient. They reached a split in the tunnel. Real raised her hand. The visor responded with a faint glow forming a thin line of light along the left passage. Davin had never seen the device behave on its own. He felt a twist in his chest. This thing he built had become more than a tool. It was becoming alive in its own ways. They moved, left the air, grew warmer. A soft vibration traveled through the ground. Davin knelt and touched the stone. It trembled under his fingertips like something humming deep. Beloriel spoke again. "This place is not a mine." The miners reached something they were never meant to find. "My people used sites like this long ago. They stored knowledge, memories, warnings. The visor is waking." Then Davin stared at her. "Your people made this. But you never said anything like that before." Eel lowered her head. "I did not know until now. The visor unlocked something inside me. Fragments of memory, faces, places, sounds. I was too young when I was taken from my world. I forgot everything. Until the visor touched my mind." She walked ahead, leaving Davin struggling with questions. Who were the Niar? Truly, why was Riel left blind, and why did her forgotten past attract these silent hunters from the sky? Ground shook more strongly as they approached a massive metal door half buried under rock. Symbols glowed across its surface, the same ones Davin found in the visor logs. Riel placed her hands on the door, and the symbols brightened as if welcoming her home. The door opened without sound, revealing a vast chamber inside. A pale blue light filled the space. Columns of crystal rose from the floor and reached toward the ceiling like frozen thunder. In the center stood a spherical structure with cracks of light weaving across it like moving veins. Riel stepped toward it. Davin followed cautiously, his heart thundering in his chest. A sphere opened, revealing a hollow core. Inside floated an orb of pure light. Its glow reflected on Riel's face, making her look older, wiser, almost regal. She whispered, "This is a memory core, a sacred vault of my people. It contains knowledge from before the fall of our worlds, and the hunters above seek it to control it or destroy it." Davin felt his breath catch. Why would they destroy knowledge? Knowledge is power, power is threat. But Riel shook her head. Not knowledge. Davin warning. A warning meant for humanity to something coming from beyond the borders of known space. Something even the hunters fear. The chamber lights flickered. A deep pulse traveled through the room. Riel pressed her hand lightly against the orb, and in that moment, the visor lit with blinding white energy. The walls came alive, showing moving images, stars collapsing, fleets burning. A giant shadow drifting through the void, like a storm swallowing worlds whole. Davin staggered back. What is that thing? What are we seeing? Riel trembled. This is the Void Marcher, a being older than star systems. My people tried to fight it. Many races did. We failed. Only fragments of us survived. Suddenly, the chamber alarms exploded into red light. A new voice echoed through the cavern. Cold, emotionless, absolute target signal confirmed. Extraction required. Eliminate resistance. Hunters had found them. Riel pulled her hand away from the core, and the images vanished. She turned to Davin with fear and determination mixed in her eyes. "You were never meant to build the visor," she said, "but now that you have, you are part of this. You can run. Or you can help me protect what remains of my people." The ground shook again as dust fell from the ceiling. Davin clenched his fists. He looked at the girl he saved, the girl who now carried the fate of more than one world in her hands. "Am not running," he said. "Tell me what we do next." Riel nodded as the shadows of the hunters approached the chamber entrance. The visor glowed brighter. The memory core hummed like a living heart, and the ancient site prepared to awaken fully. The real fight was about to begin. The chamber shook as the hunters closed in. Dust fell like ash from the ceiling, and yet Riel stood calmly in front of the memory core. The visor on her head, glowing like a rising sun. Davin tightened his grip on the old plasma cutter in his hand. It was not a weapon, but it was all he had. He looked at Riel, and then at the only exit. They were trapped. She turned to him with quiet strength. In her voice, "There is something I must show you, but you will not like it." Davin did not respond. He simply nodded and followed her as she placed her hand on the surface of the glowing orb. Once more the light shifted. The chamber walls became a screen of memories. This time, it was not the past of her people. It was the past of humanity. Davin saw images: Terran warships, expansion fleets, colonies burning. He saw a Nayari world being wiped clean by orbital fire reel. Whispered, this was not done by the hunters, this was done by humans, long before peace was made. Davin stepped back as if the images burned his skin. No, we were told it was a conflict. Not an extermination. Reel looked at him. They erased that truth, and the visor is connecting pieces lost. For generations, that is why they are here, not to kill us, but to silence what we now know. The truth felt heavier than any weapon. Davin felt guilt he never asked for. He had tried to help one lost girl, but now he held a key to history no one wanted. Revealed suddenly, a low hum echoed through the chamber. A new voice entered from the shadows, familiar to familiar. It was Merrick, an old colony contact. Another human mechanic. Davin had once worked with Merrick, stepped into the light with hands raised. Davin, I told them where you were, but I had to. They said you stole military tech. They said you had alien weapons. Davin stared at him in disbelief. You sold me out for a Lee. Merrick shook his head. No, for credits. A lot of them behind him, 2 of the hunters. Stepped in their armor, humming with energy. They said nothing, only stood like statues of judgment. Davin stepped in front of Reel. You are not taking her. One of the hunters raised a hand and spoke for the first time. Its voice was flat, neither male nor female. She belongs to a broken bloodline. The visor must be returned. The threat must be erased. Reel answered in a voice stronger than before. You erased our worlds. You hunted us across stars, but you cannot erase memory, not forever. The ground rumbled as the memory core pulsed again. It rejected the hunter's presence. Lights flickered and energy surged around them. Davin grabbed Reel's arm. Now we run. They bolted toward the emergency exit tunnel, a path Davin had mapped weeks ago, but never used. Behind them, the chamber exploded in a wave of force. The hunters staggered. Merrick screamed as he was thrown to the wall. Through narrow shafts and forgotten shafts, they ran. The visor dimmed as Reel gasped. It is draining me. Too much data, too fast. Davin helped her forward, one step at a time, one breath after another. They reached the surface at the edge of the southern ridge. The sun had returned, rising between the canyons. It painted the land in gold. Reel fell to her knees, her skin glowing faintly. The visor cracked at the edges. Davin knelt beside her. We have to destroy it. They will not stop as long as it exists. She looked up at him. Not yet. There is one more place. It points to a hidden vault. The last of our kind left something there. Davin nodded. Then we go there. Behind them, a column of black smoke rose from the mine. The hunters were alive, and they were coming again, but this time they would not be chasing ghosts. They would be chasing the last memory of a race they thought forgotten, and a human who dared to remember with them. Asterisk. The wind screamed across the ridge as Davin and Reel moved through the ruins of what was once an outpost. The visor flickered weakly against her temple. Its light was dim now, pulsing like a fading heartbeat. They had no food, no signal, no safe zone. Only one last location left to follow. The vault is close, Reel said. Her voice strained, but I cannot guide us for much longer. The visor is breaking, and I can feel it pulling at my mind. Davin tightened the straps on his pack. Inside were tools, parts, and fragments from the memory core. He knew they meant something. He just did not know what. Yet as they crossed the broken land, the clouds above opened to reveal a dark shape. A low-flying dropship hovered silently, then curved away as if scouting the area. They had been seen. We need cover, Davin said. Reel pointed to a collapsed tunnel near a ridge of crystal spikes. There, she said, underground. Pathways should still connect to the old structure. They slipped inside just as the sound of engines returned. The air shimmered with heat from a plasma burst above the surface. The hunters were not waiting this time. They were hunting with fire inside. The tunnel, it was dark and cold. The walls hummed faintly, as if alive lights blinked in the distance. Old power systems still breathing under dust and stone. Davin reached a control panel, and pulled wires free with a few sparks and a burst of smoke. The panel lit up. A map of the underground system appeared. Their destination was below them, deep and guarded as. They moved. Reel stumbled. Her legs gave way, and she leaned against the wall. The visor flashed again, then dimmed completely. Davin caught her. Before she fell, "You need to rest," but she shook her head. "No time. They are close, and they are angry. I can feel the heat of their minds like claws on my skin." Suddenly, the floor behind them exploded. Metal shards flew past as a hunter dropped from. The ceiling above its armor was scorched from the previous blast. But it moved with precision and speed. Davin pulled a pulse flare and slammed it to the ground. Light surged through the corridor and blinded the hunter for just a second, enough time for them to dive through a side shaft and roll into a maintenance tunnel. They ran not just to survive, but toward something ancient waiting in silence. They reached the vault door. This one was different, smoother. No cracks, no light, but the visor flickered. Once more, as Reel raised her hand, the stone rippled like water and opened without a sound. Inside was a vast hall lined with glowing pillars. Floating above them were constructs of crystal and metal, some broken, some pulsing with energy. "This is the place," she said. "The final forge." Davin stepped forward. "What is forged here?" She turned to him. "Weapons, but not the kind you think. Knowledge, frequency, harmony encoded in design, and this place, it can finish what you started." Davin set down his pack. He placed the broken visor into a cradle near the center. The forge reacted instantly. Blue light flowed through the room like liquid starlight. Pieces lifted from the air, fragments of data, metal, memory, and from that chaos, a new shape formed. A second visor, sleeker, stronger, alive. Reel placed it on her head. Her eyes glowed through the lens. "And she stood taller than before. They came before us," she said, "and they destroyed worlds in silence. But they did not understand that ideas do not die just then." The vault door shattered behind them. The hunters entered, weapons raised. But they paused. Reel stepped forward, and the air around her shifted. Energy rippled across the room. "I am not a weapon," she said. "I am a reminder." The hunters raised their arms, but nothing happened there. Systems blinked and shut down. The forge was rewriting the rules. "You see," Davin said, standing beside her. "You chased her because you feared what she might awaken. Now she has. You will learn that fear is not stronger than memory, though." Lead hunter dropped his weapon. He looked at Reel, and for the first time he knelt behind him. The others followed. Davin watched in silence. Not as a builder of machines, but as a witness to change. Reel turned to him with tears in her eyes, not of sorrow, but of awakening. One battle had ended, but the war had only just begun. The silence in the vault, held for only a moment outside the sky, had begun to change. Dark clouds twisted unnaturally above the land. Lights flickered in the distance, where the colony once stood. Signals had returned, and with them came war. Reel stood at the center of the forge chamber, the new visor resting perfectly against her skin. Its light was calm but deep within. Its glow was the fire of something ancient, something. Now fully awake, Davin stood beside her. His arms crossed, his eyes scanning the ceiling as if expecting it to fall. He had seen many machines come to life, but none like this. "They are coming," he said, his voice quiet but firm, "and not just the hunters. Earth Command has been listening. They want to know why the satellites went silent, why soldiers stopped responding, why the colony blacked out." Reel nodded slowly. "They will come with fear, and when fear leads destruction, follows." The forge room began too dim as its energy shifted inward, preparing for departure. The walls shimmered with pathways, escape routes, hidden doors that had not opened in centuries. "You need to go," Davin said to her. "Take the data, the visor, everything. Get off world before they arrive." Reel looked at him with eyes that now held the weight of 1,000 voices. "No, not without you. This story is not only mine. You made it possible. You gave light to something forgotten." Davin clenched his jaw. "I built a tool. You became the purpose." Above them, the sound of engines cut through the clouds. Earth ships, fast class, heavily armed. They came in formation like a fist ready to strike inside the vault. Riel raised her hand, and the walls answered. Data flowed into a capsule, small enough to carry, powerful enough to change everything. She handed it to Davin. This is our truth. Take it to the broadcast tower. Let the stars hear it. Let every voice know what was done, what must never be done again. On you, he asked. What will you do, Riel? Turn to the center of the forge. The floor opened, revealing a deep chamber filled with light. I will hold them back, not with weapons, but with memory. Hunters who once chased her now stood as guardians. Their armor dimmed, their weapons lowered. They had remembered who they once were, not killers, but keepers. As Davin left through the eastern path, the walls closed behind him. Each step he took echoed with purpose. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was a messenger. Outside, the land had turned. To fire, the Earth fleet landed with no warning. Tanks rolled across, stone drones circled the ridge, voices barked orders into static, but Davin did not stop. He reached the old communication tower, climbed through rusted steel, attached the capsule to the core relay and powered it on. The message pulsed once, then launched into the sky, a wave of truth riding through every signal, every satellite. Every system. The truth was out back. At the forge, Riel stood alone, surrounded but unafraid. The Earth soldiers entered, weapons ready, eyes cold. She spoke before they could fire. I am not your enemy. I am the result of your silence. The visor shone with a final burst of light. Images filled the room. Of burning worlds, of broken promises, of forgotten peace. The soldiers hesitated. They saw what Davin had sent, heard voices long dead, felt shame too heavy to ignore. They lowered their weapons. One by one, in the tower, Davin watched the signal spread. 1 planet, then 10, then 100. The story was no longer his or hers. It belonged to the galaxy. Now the visor had begun as a tool. It became a light, then a weapon, then a Kiand. Now it was a voice speaking across stars. When Davin returned to the forge, Riel was waiting, alive, changed, free. We did it, she said. Not with war, but with truth. He smiled for the first time in years as they walked into the rising sun. The future no longer felt empty, felt awake.